welcome back. I'm Adam of the WALTWINS, but if this is your first time here with us, welcome. Consider subscribing and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything that we do here in our backyard diner. If you are new here, you might be wondering who is this we of which you speak. Well, normally there are two of us. We are freakishly identical twins, as we have been so eloquently called before, I guess, in the past, but we normally are here together cooking in the backyard diner or up at Brett's test kitchen. Brett can't be here today. It is the holiday season. He is celebrating with his family. For those that don't know, we live about 2 hours apart, and so we get together as often as we can to film these amazing cooks. We love getting together to cook together and to share our passion with you. But today, I have the opportunity to share something, well, on my own. I don't like to do these on my own. I always prefer when Brett's here with me, and it's unfortunate for him because he's not gonna get to taste the goodness of this mojo pulled pork, this Cuban mojo pulled pork that I had the awesome opportunity to cook. So I just wanted to tell you about this because there was a learning curve. There were some new things I learned along the way and tweaks that I would make, and I want to share those with you. But overall, I want to share this cook with you because it was an amazing one. But first, let's talk about the groceries. What are we looking at? Well, I had 3 pork butts. That's 3 Boston shoulders that we picked up at Sam's Club. They ranged from about 8.75 pounds to 9.75 pounds, and there was one right in the middle between those two. So about a pound difference between the smallest and the largest, and that did make a difference when cooking, but I'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, for this mojo, there's so many different recipes that you can find online. I wanted to find a really good marinade that would work well with the pulled pork, especially going on the smoker. For a really good Cuban mojo, they say the best thing to have is sour oranges. I didn't have access to sour oranges and couldn't find any, but it's okay because there's a workaround. I ended up using orange juice and lime juice kind of mix. It was great and it worked in a pinch, and honestly, the taste was still amazing. Another key ingredient in this is garlic. We used a lot of garlic. I would say, I believe for the 3, I ended up using about 24 cloves of garlic. There was a lot of that. We had oregano, some cilantro, which I threw in, which is an option. Not all Cuban mojos will use cilantro. I love cilantro. I used it, and then some salt and pepper, and that's pretty much all that's going into this one. Some people use red pepper flakes. I've learned from the past I don't care for red pepper flakes in this. Bay leaves are also commonly used. If I was slow cooking this, maybe I would use it. But for this marinade, I held off on using bay leaves, which I'm not a big fan of anyways. I know used correctly, they can add the right amount of flavor. For this one, I didn't want to. I've used them before and it's taken away from the dish before. So that's something that you can or you don't have to use. I will be posting the recipe that I used down in the video description below this video afterwards. But the idea was, and this was my first tip that I would change for next time. Now this did call for a 12 to 24 hour marinade and up, so I could have done it even longer. I was in a pinch. I had to get this ready because realizing I was going out of town for the next day because we would be having this pork 2 days later, I turned this into about a 6-hour marinade, which was still good, but it did lack a little bit of flavor. We had some extra mojo that we threw in afterwards, and I'll show you the process of what I tried to do to trick it. It worked, it gave great flavor, but we did have to do a couple of workarounds. So the first thing I did is I went ahead and I prepped the pork butt. I only trimmed a little bit of the fat. These are actually already trimmed up pretty good. If I were to do this again, I would either take off most of the fat to begin with or just make sure I pull it out at the end, something else that I did the best I could, but I could have done a better job for sure. Now, in prepping these, I just made the marinade. I went ahead and got my pork butts in these 2.5 gallon Ziploc bags. Now, I will say, these were Hefty brand, and I was not impressed. The Ziploc did not lock at first, and I ended up with a lot of the mojo all over the table. I had to make some more, and I was not happy about that, but we got the process done. We got these bagged up and in the fridge. After that, I let them sit for as long as I could before I knew I had to get ready for the night. Was hoping to not go all through the night. I ended up prepping and working on this up until about 3:30 in the morning. But I want to talk more about the process. So I came out to the grill, and the intent was to cook these at 225 for about 12 hours. But looking at my time crunch and knowing that I had to shorten it, and I wasn't really worried about the smokiness overall, I went ahead and tossed this at 275. Now, doing my research, 225 to 275 is going to be a good spot. Regardless, obviously, low and slow is key with this, especially if you're looking for a lot of smoke flavor. So I wasn't worried about sacrificing that smoke flavor for a slightly quicker cook time. That said, 225 will be the sweet spot, and I will be doing 225 probably going on from here on out and raising temp as I need. but it still turned out great. So I set these at 275. I did want to make sure I got flavor all the way through since I only marinated these for 6 hours. I did go ahead and inject with the mojo, which kind of became a mess. I ended up squirting this a little bit because as I injected the marinade, obviously pull it out a little bit so you get that marinade to spread throughout. Got it pulled out a little bit too quick a couple of times and end up with some of the mojo smelling like garlic for a little bit there. But so I got this all injected up, got it prepped and ready, and went ahead and threw it onto the grill. Now I had 2 on the top rack and 1 on the bottom, and it barely fit, but guess what? It still fit. Now the 2 on the top shared the rack. Because of that, I was able to spin them around, but I couldn't rotate these like I would have liked to, moving them from top to bottom. So the one on the bottom rack did actually cook about 10 to 12 degrees warmer than the other 2. It wasn't that big of a problem, but I still ended up getting good flavor. Now throughout, after the first 2 hours and I stuck the probe in, I did start marinating as well every hour for the next 2 or 3 hours. And I just took the mojo marinade with my baster and I would just kind of drizzle it across the top, really kind of make sure that this stayed moist, stayed wet, but also got a lot of that flavor as well. Now the last time I basted, rather than using the marinade, because I did just have a little bit of marinade and to make sure these didn't dry out before I did wrap these in foil, I just squirted them down with just a little bit of water, really make sure that we had moisture. Now I will say my water pan never went empty, which was good. So it kept it nice and moist in there as well, which worked great. Once I got these to about 260, 265, I went ahead and put them in the pan, and I did them all at the same time because they were all close enough within that temperature area that I did go ahead and pan these up. I got these smaller pans so they could sit side by side. I went ahead and foiled them and put them back on, got the probes in, and then just watched them from there. And the good thing is the stall did not last nearly as long as I've seen in the past. Within an hour, I was already raising 5 to 10 degrees and we were back on. So by the time these were ready to be pulled, these had been on for about 9 hours, 8.5, 9 hours. And my bottom one, it said it was reading at 210. When I moved with the probe, it was actually back down to about 205. It was perfect. I pulled it. The other 2 were pushing upper 196, 197 in that area. I was originally going to wait till 205, but we're also looking at midnight at this point, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't want to overdo it and then have these kind of turn to mush. So I went ahead and pulled them, wrapped these, and put them in towels in the cooler. Now, that did actually help quite a bit. Now, this would have been my trick for next time. Next time I will, rather than pull these at 195, 197, leave them until 203, which for me has been the sweet spot. Then go ahead and put them in the cooler and then just kind of monitor for the next couple of hours. These were in the cooler for just under 2 hours. At this point, it was 3:30 in the morning. I recognized I had a choice. I could have kind of left them in the cooler for a couple more hours, try to get some sleep, but at 3:30 in the morning, I thought at 2 hours, I was at a point they had been sitting long enough, I could probably go ahead and pull the meat. If I were looking back, I would have set an alarm, let them rest for maybe 4, 5, even 6 hours because they were still really hot when I opened these up. I opened them up, let them sit for a good 10, 15 minutes. Could have gone 30 minutes, and then just really started pulling them. And like I said, the one that was cooking the hottest, this thing fell apart beautifully. Everything else, while the other ones for the most part fell apart and pulled apart just by reaching my hand through it. By the way, that bone pull on each of them was great. The first 2, it wasn't a struggle, but I had to use both hands and then it slipped right out. But that third one, I just grabbed with my left hand, pulled that bone right out. That told me that it was ready to go. That was the one that cooked at the higher temperature, and it was great. A couple of lessons, like I said, the 2 I should have left on for another hour. So those 2 that were in the 195 to 197, when I pulled them, next time I would leave them on for about another hour or let them get to temp about 203. 203 for me is the magic number. That seems to be when I've had the most success. Would have left them on, that would have helped. And then also trusting the process to let them rest. It's so funny, Brett and I say all the time on the channel, trust the process. I second guessed myself because this is my first time doing 3 pork shoulders at one time, and I should have trusted the process. I'm sure many of you have a lot of input and thoughts on that. Feel free to share in the comments below. We love to learn and just get better at this whole process. In the end, pulling this meat and everything, it turned out phenomenal. So I made a little extra mojo to go on the sides, but I just wanted to show a little bit of footage of what we got because this did end up going to our holiday party. This was everybody's take on it. Kenzie, how's the pork? Is it good? Cannon, how's the pork, buddy? Is it good? Awesome, awesome. Is it good, girls? Nice.
Yummy, yummy.
How's the pork? Yeah, you normally don't eat it. How's the pork, buddy? It's the best? You like it? Griffin, do you normally eat pork?
No.
But do you like that pork? Yeah?
You need to make it.
You need me to make it more? You got it, buddy. He's devoured his plate. We got a little heapy serving for him there. So I would say in the end, it turned out great. In fact, we used a whole extra tray that we had, a whole extra pan for Cuban sandwiches the next day. We made Cuban press sandwiches actually on Italian bread because no stores were open on Christmas, and we had forgotten to get some Cuban rolls, which are readily available here in Central Florida. We just forgot to get them, so we ended up improvising, and the sandwiches were unbelievable because that pork was so tender and juicy. My biggest takeaway, this was some of the most tender and juicy pork shoulder that I had made. So tender and juicy, 2 days later, it sat in that mojo flavored marinade a little bit longer, and it was great. There it is. I know this was confusing. I was kind of all over the place with this, but this was absolutely a fun process. And I will say this, if you are new to smoking, this is great. It's a lot of fun. And I was talking to actually the manager at Publix who loves to smoke meats, and when he was talking about his favorite thing is actually running all through the night, which is great. I think that's super awesome. But when we were talking, kind of what we found, the joy of this is you could smoke a pork butt every day, and every day it's gonna cook just a little bit different. So the process is there, it's a lot of fun, but the outcome is always phenomenal. This is what we say when we do cooking on the griddle. The food's just always good. Well, these pork shoulders turned out phenomenal, and I couldn't be more pleased with this. I can't wait to do this again, to get to try this mojo and actually many other recipes on here. We did use a little bit of Usual Suspects as a rub as well. I would have used more. If you don't know what Usual Suspects is, I'll also put that below. It's a mix of salt, pepper, garlic. It's kind of your SPG. We use onion powder. We use Accent, which is like an MSG product, and adobo, all mixed together for a phenomenal rub. And man, it was really good. I would have also used more of that if I could have. In the end, everybody loved it like you saw, and it was such a fun and amazing process. Well, I hope this gave you some insights and helped a little bit. If it did, make sure and give this a thumbs up. It's one way in which you can support us and what we do here. I really do appreciate it. Another way you can support us is through our merchandise. There's a link to that in the description below this video. Our merchandise is brought to you through Digital Promotions, who works closely with Crossroads Missions. And Crossroads Missions does amazing service work. We love being a part of who they are and what they do. In fact, a portion of all the purchases made through the WALTWINS goes to benefit Crossroads Missions and their mission and their work. And again, we love just being a part of who they are. We also do have a Patreon. If you'd like to learn more about that, that information is down below as well. And thank you so much to our Patreons. We love you so much for the support you give us. Well, that's kind of it. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up because, well, I don't really have anything else to add. The pork was amazing. We love doing this. The Laredo 1000 is a beast. I have come to absolutely love this machine. I've been so impressed with this, and we can't wait to throw more on here. We've been dying to do ribs, another brisket, some spatchcock chicken. I mean, we've got a whole list of requests that we can't wait to get into. So, well, that's it for me, so I'm gonna get up out of here. And with that, I bid you adieu, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Feel it in my bones, I can feel it in my veins.